A lot of high expectations for Dana Holgorsen and the Houston Cougars. Joseph Duarte covers U of H. Also, many other things for the Houston Chronicle. Joins us on 365 Sports with Paul Craig, and I'm David Smoak. Joseph, thank you very much. I saw the front page. You put that up on your Twitter feed at the top about the Texans writing it out with Mills. It's what it dictates. But then the picture of Dana, and at 2 and 3, the Heat builds. How high on a scale of 1 to 10 do you think the Heat might be?
It's probably a lukewarm 6 right now, 6.5, and you know he's not in jeopardy as we speak on the radio right now. But I can tell you that if things continue the way they are for the rest of this season, the talk is going to intensify. I think he gets 1 year at least in the Big 12 if they have a bad year this year, and then a change could be made. But right now, he's got the support of the two of the higher ranking people at U of H, the Board of Regents Chairman Tillman Fertitta and the athletic director Chris Tesman.
It just seems that I know he's a guy who runs a little hot, Joseph, but it seems like this year that is the norm, and then it's spilling over. They had the incident on the sidelines, and he seems to be lashing out a little bit more.
He is, and that's sort of Dana is the fiery type. He doesn't hold back. He says what's on his mind. But you're right. It's been a combination of they've had 3 overtime games in 5 weeks. They've had leads in the fourth quarter each time and blew it in the final minute. So he's lashed out. He took a lot of criticism for his comment about tired of motivating players. He's taken some criticism for saying we need better players. And then this past week when they ran out the last few seconds of regulation, the crowd boos and he throws up his hands, and it looked really bad on TV. And he acknowledged that, look, I was frustrated too, those were his words. But yeah, there's been a lot of off the field drama that goes along with all the on the field stuff that they're having to sort through as well.
Joseph, you mentioned those overtimes. They had 5 overtimes in the first 2 weeks, which is just insane. But, the win over UTSA, the loss in Lubbock, that was the double overtime. Kansas just beat them. The close win against Rice that I know there was, kind of a skin to their teeth thing that was even more worrisome. And then the loss in OT to Tulane. We've addressed, kind of the Dana and that part, but there were expectations for this team to be better, perhaps like the G5 darling that's able to be, in contention for the playoff with Clayton Tune and Nathaniel Dell and all these guys. Why has it not worked out? What's been the major issues?
Maybe somebody sold the vision that we all bought into, and it's the way it looks. They're not as good as people thought. And, we look at the defensive side, they have 4 guys that they lost that are playing in the NFL now. And I know every team goes through that or hopes to go through that at some point. But, the thought was that they had capable guys that had gotten a lot of playing time last year that were going to step in and fill some of those voids. Now, that hasn't panned out. They lose the top guy on defense, had 5 sacks in one game against Texas Tech. And he's lost for the season with a bicep injury, so that kind of piles on things. This really started, I thought, with a 4th and 20 play against Texas Tech. They give up 19, 18, whatever. They win that game. They gave up 21 on that play and ended up losing in double overtime, and then it has just gone downhill since. They're giving up these 75-plus yard drives in 30 seconds to end games that forced the overtime. They're the worst penalized team in the country. They've got, injuries happen, but injuries aren't even their biggest problem. It's just undisciplined mistakes. Dana calls them stupid stuff, stupid crap. Those are his words. And, so they're having to sort through. But I just think that from where the preseason hype was, you knew UTSA was a good opponent. You knew Texas Tech would be good. But at times it just just doesn't look like a team that deserved that. And that's sort of where they're at right now. They're having to search and look in the mirror and find out where can they turn this around, because if, they have a bye week coming up, they've got some time. It's because if they don't quick, this thing's going to get out of control.
Clayton Tune came into the year with a tremendous resume, and obviously he's got like 9 touchdowns, 3 picks, and 1,000 yards or whatever. Are they wasting Clayton Tune's last year?
They wasted a couple of his early years. He had to go in. He was the De'Aaron King replacement when De'Aaron King decided to redshirt one year, and he had to come in and play in a bowl game that he got sacked 10 times because they didn't have they had an injured quarterback then. So that's kind of been the story of his life. And last year he finally gets a full year, but he was hurt for part of it and had his best year. So for them to come in this year, he had a 1,300-yard receiver in Nathaniel Dell. They went out and got some more receivers, surrounded him with some playmakers. You thought, okay, this was the year that this offense was going to take off. And then, Dana Holgorsen sort of passed off the play calling duty towards the end of last year just because he's got trust in Shannon Dawson, who's been with him a long time, and that carried over to this year. And then you just look at what they do offensively, and it puzzles you at times. That you wonder, where is the explosiveness? Where is the vertical threat? Some of the imaginative stuff that a lot of teams do. And to Clayton's defense, the offensive line is nothing like it was last year. They had the same 5 for all 14 games. They've had a mix and match group because of injuries and underperforming players. So. A long answer. They have sort of wasted his year so far because they've got to open this thing up, and they've sort of tied his ankles with some chains because he's just not able to do a lot back there right now.
How big would a win against the first place team of the AAC, Memphis, this week go?
It would help the healing process. You look at Memphis; they're 4-1. It's a little misleading. Last week they were down 3-0 to Temple entering the fourth quarter, so they haven't exactly. The record sort of doesn't tell the full story, but it is a conference game. It is a sort of a rivalry game for them if they have that type. Outside of SMU and the American Conference, so any win at this point. When you're talking about having pivotal moments of the season, the fork in the road, they've got to get these wins because you look down the road, they go to Navy the following week, and then they've got some other tough games on the schedule that people thought may have been gimmies that aren't a sure thing anymore. So this one would help. I mean, any win at this point is a step in the right direction.
Joseph, you mentioned, as far as kind of maybe overrating or overthinking this year's team, like Logan Halls don't grow on trees, right? But, you mentioned injuries as well. How key and how big of a loss was Derek Parrish?
It was huge. This was a guy that he that offensive line as a whole, it gets a lot of attention, but he was having a career year. And, you look at him and, he's just this, he's the type of guy you walk into a gym and you see what he does and weightlifting and his power. And he just sort of epitomized what they want to be like up front. And when you don't have him, they have a guy, DeAnthony Jones, who actually led the team in sacks last year that's replacing him. But Derek was just having a next level type of year for them. And, they've lost their leading tackler, Donovan Mooden, who's sort of the Peyton Manning of the defense, or the heart and soul. He's missed the game with the shoulder injury. So they've had some significant guys that are out. And you're right. People like Peyton Turner and Logan Hall, those guys don't grow on trees. They would be really big trees if they did. But I think that's where Houston is sort of having to feel their way. They're entering the Big 12. They know that they need a certain type of player. And, these guys just sort of were born a couple of years too early, to not have them when they go into the Big 12. But yeah, losing Derek Parrish was the latest blow for a defense that just couldn't not, they didn't need another, mark like that against them.
You mentioned Tillman, Fertitta, and Pesman. Sometimes anytime you get like this vote of confidence or support, that usually is a death nail. But you're saying that it feels like unless just something completely falls off the rails, they want to have him and give him a chance to compete the first year in the Big 12.
Yeah, you're right. That kiss of death, so to speak, when you get that vote of confidence. But, I'll throw this number at you. It's about $18.5 million right now. That's what the buyout would be. It's a unusual situation because he had 2 years left on his contract. But once Houston got into the Big 12, there was a clause that got triggered that in good faith, the two sides would begin negotiating a new deal for Dana Holgorsen. And, whether it needed to be done that quickly or not, that's up for discussion, but they did it. He's due 100% for the next 3 years, plus 60% of the last 2 years. So when you add it up, that's a lot of money that Houston just frankly can't afford to just throw away money like that. Now, Tillman, if he wants to write a check, I'm sure that's an option. But Dana Holgorsen's his hand-picked guy.
Yeah,
that was a Tillman Fertitta hire. So they want to ride this out. People that I've talked to said, look, they know people are frustrated. They know donors are frustrated, but they want to see this thing, how it plays out, because Houston has either lost coaches to other schools or in Major Applewhite's situation, they pulled the plug after 2 years. They just can't do that, especially going into the Big 12 next year.
And you mentioned that they've lost, like they're kind of in a unique spot where they kept losing coaches to other spots, whether it be A&M or Baylor or Texas or whoever came and got their coach. But most of the time, Joseph, you look around the country, nobody really needs to give these extensions. It's all just for the ego of the coach.
Right. And, and not only the extent, you look at the money that gets thrown around and, whether it's the loyalty or not. You've seen coaches that jump ship and have years remaining on their contract. I mean, look what's going on. The Kansas coach is having a great year in his second year, and he's probably gone after this year. He'll have a pick of the Nebraska job or the Wisconsin job, and that's just where they're at. And I'm of the belief that, look, Dana Holgorsen had dealt with some unusual circumstances. Year 2 was the pandemic. Year 3 finally felt normal for them when they won 12 games, but that was just one season. You play it out. You tell them, look, in good faith, we'll go to the negotiating table, but let's see how this year goes. But hey, to his agent's credit, he got him a heck of a deal, and for right now, that's something Houston has to live with. And he's signed until 2027. He says he wants to be in Houston. This is the last stop for him. If that's going to happen, we're going to have to see a lot of things turn around because otherwise Houston's going to find themselves in a tough situation of whether they are going to have to pony up some money and yet again go looking for another head football coach.
Do you feel like Dave Aranda, after 2-7, immediately fired his offensive coordinator, offensive line coach, and made some dramatic changes? Do you feel like there will be any pressure on Dana to do anything with his staff?
Right now, no. I think the one thing that is the most plausible is that he takes back over the play calling duties. And that's something that we're told from within the athletic department is on the table and being discussed. If this thing continues, I could see changes with the staff. I remember, after an embarrassing loss to Texas State one year, Tony Levine, this is week 1 of the season, he canned his offensive coordinator. And that was only after 1 week. So, they've given some time to see how this plays out. I don't think they can, if it continues this way, that they can go much longer. So that would be the first step to make him or ask him to make decisions like that. And that's probably part of the saving your job for the moment by making changes elsewhere within your program.
I appreciate it, Joseph. Thank you for being a part of the show. Good stuff. Joseph Duarte, Houston Chronicle, covers Houston for us. Again, the front page today about Mills, the quarterback with the Texans, and it's just kind of who they have to deal with right now. But Also 2 and 3 the heat level on Dana Holgorsen at the University of Houston.